Tonight, how a Gen Z protest movement that started as an online joke is shaking the Indian government. Despite a ruthless crackdown, supporters of India's Cockroach Party are back on the streets, demanding substantial reforms.
They hit me on my head, on my face. I would have lost an eye.
We are scared of what can happen, but it can be only a physical injury. But what we are suffering from right now is an injury to our futures.
So can they actually succeed where so many others have failed? I'll ask a senior member of the country's newest political party. Plus, the personal plea from president to president that led to the release of one of China's best-known pastors. Tonight, he speaks on camera for the first time since leaving prison. And how an AI bot escaped the lab and launched a cyber attack on a rival company. Is this the moment big tech gets reined in? Find out coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. It's called the Cockroach Movement, backed by tens of millions on social media. It's led by Gen Z protesters in India who are demanding education and political reforms. Thousands of supporters have been blockading the centre of Delhi for nearly 2 months. Then, on Monday, this happened. A violent police crackdown which left dozens of protesters and officers injured. So, how did we get here? Well, it all started with this. Have a look.
There are already parasites in society who attack you people, you attack the system, and you want to join hands with them.
No, my lord. I understand, my lord, and I understand.
Have you seen there are youngsters like cockroaches, they don't get any employment, they don't have any place in profession. Some of them become media, some of them become social media, some of them become RTI activists, some have become another activists, and they start attacking everyone.
That's the Chief Justice of India comparing unemployed youth to parasites and cockroaches. And this was the very Gen Z response. A jokey tweet from an Indian student who's recently graduated from a university in the US. He suggested, what if all cockroaches came together? And they did. Followers of the movement's Instagram page surpassed India's ruling party in just 4 days. That number now stands at nearly 25 million. That's more than double that of the BJP. The Cockroach Party is giving a voice to wider frustrations about a corrupt education and job system where exam papers are leaked and sold to the highest bidder. And 40% of graduates aged 25 and under are unemployed. And the protests have swelled again after a prominent activist who's been on hunger strike was forcibly taken to hospital. So could this movement become a real challenge to the powerful right-wing government of Narendra Modi? We'll focus on that tonight. Our India reporter Neville Lazarus has been hearing from supporters in Delhi.
They are neither deterred nor fearful. Across the capital city, thousands of young people again ready to protest despite the stifling heat.
We are peacefully protesting. We have been doing that for over a month now. So that is what the aim is, and we will continue until we get the accountability that we are asking for, and that will actually end up with the education minister resigning.
A dialogue is all we need. A dialogue, this is just so basic for a democracy like us. So a dialogue which comes out and acknowledges some sort of accountability. This government has forgotten that there is accountability. We've forgotten that we need to ask for accountability.
The government has not budged, instead ordered a severe crackdown on protesters. They hit me on my head, on my face. I would have lost an eye. I've had stitches, and when I fell, they beat me mercilessly on my legs. When I tried to stand up, one hit me on my chest and I fell. I don't know what kind of enmity they had with me.
Are you not scared of what can happen to you again?
We are scared of what can happen, but it can be only a physical injury. But what we are suffering from right now is an injury to our futures. We are not promised a bright future. We are not promised a fair exam. We are not promised a right opportunity in this country. And this is my country. This is their country, and everyone wants that.
On Monday, they broke through police barriers and marched to Parliament while the House was in session. Many were detained. And then came the crackdown. For hours, tear gas rained down. The police and paramilitary launched relentless baiting charges. Few escaped unscathed. Many of those injured were students barely out of the teens, including young women. Delhi police maintains that no force was used and insisted the situation was being handled professionally. But our images tell a different story. The site that stood for weeks was torn down and cleared, but was reclaimed by students just a few hours later. The popularity of this movement is a clear warning. There is deep-seated anger and alienation among the country's youth. To ignore it without addressing the root causes could be a big mistake. Neville Lazarus, Sky News at Jantar Mantar in Delhi.
So what's the end goal for the Cockroach Janta Party? I asked the group's spokesperson, Vaishnavi Gaur. Vaishnavi, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme. If you could just explain to me what is currently happening in Delhi, because we are seeing all sorts of images of thousands of young people out on the streets in central Delhi at the moment. But just talk me through what is happening.
So yes, currently around millions of people, millions of students, especially the youth, right now out in the streets, and majority of it is linked to the education system problems. Since past 1 month, there have been protests happening on repeated paper leaks, compromised education systems, and for the past 1 month, there have been a peaceful, completely non-violent sit-in at New Delhi, Jantar Mantar, the designated protest site. One of the renowned educationists of India, Sonam Wangchuk, was also setting on a hunger strike. The Cockroach Janta Party, which started as a satire, had asked for the resignation of India's education minister, Dharmendra Pradhan, under whose tenure we have seen multiple paper leaks. So that was the continued demand. The protests saw increasing support by the students. And in India, we had the start of a monsoon session, the parliament session on 20th July. Throughout the 1 month, when thousands of youngsters were just sitting peacefully, we asked the government to have a dialogue, but there was no dialogue. So it was decided that we will give a call to march to the parliament in a very peaceful manner, so that they listen to the citizens, to the youth. 20th of July. Before that, the educationist who was on hunger strike was abducted from the site. He was wrapped in sheets by Delhi police, who came in very plain clothes, and he was abducted from the site. However, the march still continued. On 20th July, millions of youngsters were out in the street, were out very peacefully with a book in their hand. But what happened was completely opposite of what these youngsters, who were largely in the age group from 14 to 25, expected. There was a brutal crackdown, unlike anything that I have seen. It was also one of the largest protests in the history of India. And what happened was that the police used tear gas, baiting charges, pellet guns. Male policemen were seen slapping young women. Kids as young as 12-year-old were hit. Citizens as old as 70 years old were hit. Everyone, no one was spared. There was heavily barricaded, anti-riot force was used. I don't think that there are enough words in which I can tell you or describe what happened on Monday. However, despite that brutality, the students who were injured, who were admitted in various parts of the hospitals of this country, regrouped in the evening, in the night, and the protests are still continuing. However, the only response from the government has been increased in security deployment. No dialogue has been initiated. A very fundamental ask by the youth that the education minister should resign has not been taken up. Not even in the dialogue.
I want to ask a little bit more about your demands, and we saw the crackdown that took place a couple of days ago. So right now we're seeing thousands of young people, tens of thousands of people gather in that area. Just talk us through what you're currently doing. So despite the crackdown, you're back in central Delhi, and do you have intentions of, trying to trigger some kind of dialogue with the government, or are you planning on just continuing your sit-in?
No, right now what happened is that we have one very, very fundamental demand, that the Education Minister of Dharmendra Pradhan should resign. In his tenure, there have been multiple paper leaks. In fact, in the last 5 years, there have been more than 70 paper leaks in this country. And the regroup after the brutal crackdown, it's a reflection of the anguish of the young who are still, after even being injured, after being beaten brutally, are sitting there. From our end, we have asked the government again and again to come and have a dialogue, to come and give the resignation, to come and at least facilitate conversation with the young people. Nothing of that sort has happened. What we want to do is to channelize this energy that is flowing in the streets of New Delhi into a very productive outlet.
Yes, we understand that several dozen young people have been left injured and hospitalized as a result of the crackdown. Are you worried and fearful that they could, launch another crackdown on these protesters?
Absolutely, we're worried. In fact, right now as I'm speaking, in the area itself, there has been an internet shutdown. The security deployment has been increased manifold. This is despite the fact that the citizens have come back, the youth have come back. This is despite all of it. We intend to stay as long as it takes to get the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan, because this is a very fundamental question. It is a fundamental question of accountability. India is the biggest democracy. We've had history of protest. We've had history of governments initiating dialogue with the protesters, and we expect just that. It's just not about the resignation of Education Minister. We have been wanting for a complete overhaul of public examination system in India. India's public examination system is one of the cornerstone of intergenerational mobility for any student who comes from a lower socioeconomic background. We've put together a charter demand with 5 demands, how to fix it, the examination system. Until and unless some sort of accountability comes in the system, it will keep on happening. The first thing that we need the government to do, we need the government to start from, is from the resignation.
Vaishnavi Gaur, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme from Delhi. So defiance there from one of the spokespeople of the Cockroach movement. But can people power make a difference? I've been speaking to Siddharth Varadarajan, founding editor of The Wire, one of India's largest independent news sites.
Well, it's a combination of several factors, but I think 2 in the main. I think many of your viewers would be interested to know or confused about the name of this party, Cockroach Janta Party. And the name essentially comes from a rather odd statement that the Chief Justice of India made, I guess about a month and a half ago, when in the context of a hearing on some matter, he referred to young people, and in particular unemployed young people, as parasites and cockroaches. And, that statement of his was, it triggered a lot of anger, of course, among young people, Gen Z. And one of these young people, Abhijit Deepke, who was then living in America, studying in Boston, essentially posted something on Instagram where he said, we're going to form the Cockroach Janta Party. And it just went viral. Within days, millions of people were following him and supporting him. And the issue that he took up was the fact that a common entrance exam for India's medical colleges had been, the question paper was leaked, obviously by some kind of a corrupt cabal. And this meant that millions of kids around India had to retake this exam. It caused a lot of distress. There are reports of perhaps over a dozen kids who, young women and men students who committed suicide as a result of this happening. And so there was a lot of anger against the government for its mishandling, its inability to administer a simple exam, and its failure to crack down on corruption. And as often happens, people sought to fix political accountability, and they zeroed in on Narendra Modi's education minister, Dharmendra Pradhan, and demanded that he resign. Often in India, if you look at the last 70 years, you can find instances of ministers quitting, being asked to go, whenever there's something disastrous that happens on their watch. And this is a demand that kids raised, students raised, and many people felt it was quite reasonable.
But what I would have to say is, I guess, as you say, many people would think that that's a reasonable request. But clearly the authorities didn't think that, because the images that we're seeing coming out of Delhi, the brutal way in which they're handling the situation with the protesters, the crackdown that we've seen, and quite shocking images of young kids, some as young as 14 or 15 or 16 years old, being beaten up by the police. I think that was quite shocking.
You're right. I mean, frankly, there is only, you said authorities in the plural. In India today, there is only one authority that matters, and that's Narendra Modi. And, for Modi, the demand for a minister's resignation is seen as something of a personal affront, because he has so personalized government over the last 12 years. Everything is linked to him. You have a major cult of personality going on. So you can't afford to let a minister go without part of that blame sticking on to you. And so I guess Modi decided that there was no way he's going to accept this call for a resignation, right? And so then the issue came, how are you going to handle a protest involving young people that has been peaceful from the outset? The government assumed that this wouldn't last more than a few days, but they held out. And at some stage, this began to attract greater and greater attention nationally, despite, I have to say, big media covering up and not really, essentially taking the government side. But through social media, this became an issue that was attracting the attention of young people around the country. And so you had kids thronging to Jantar Mantar. So on this crucial day when they decided that they were going to break their fast and march on Parliament for Modi, this was something completely unacceptable. And he got the police to resort to force, which is the only way that, frankly, he believes dissent has to be handled, which is that you don't allow people to gather, you don't allow people to protest.
Siddharth, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That was Siddharth Varadarajan, founding editor of the independent Indian news site The Wire. And if you scan the QR code on your screen right now, you can listen to the latest episode of The World podcast, where I speak to our India correspondent Neville Lazarus in more detail about those protests. You can also find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme, Sky News speaks to a Chinese pastor freed from detention after a direct intervention from President Trump.
hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Does China have a problem with religion? Well, unlike the United States, where church and state are becoming more and more intertwined, Beijing's communist leadership has been tearing down Christian churches and arresting their leaders, including this man. This is Ezra Jin. He's the founder of one of China's biggest underground churches. He was thrown in jail in October for illegal business operations. Then, on July the 4th, Independence Day in the United States, he was freed and reunited with his family after a personal intervention from Donald Trump.
There's another gentleman, a pastor, would like to see him get out. I'm going to bring his name up.
Did you bring up with President Xi any of the political prisoners in China? Are any going to be released? Any progress?
I think he's giving very serious consideration to the past.
Well, today, in his first broadcast interview, Pastor Jin describes the conditions he was held in, 30 people to a cell, the constant pressure to confess. There are tens of millions of Christians like him in China. Officially, they can only worship at churches controlled by the state because allowing the free worship of any deity may be too much of a risk for a repressive state. Our Beijing correspondent Helen Ann Smith has this report.
We're not starting this journey in China itself. Instead, this tale begins in a quiet American suburb.
It's pretty early in the morning. We're in a suburb of Washington, D.C., and we're off to meet a man at the centre of a really pretty remarkable story. He's a guy who, up until just a few weeks ago, was in a Chinese jail.
This home, this family, are at the centre of a saga that can feel barely believable.
Hi, Ezra.
Yes, good to see you. Yes,
Thank you for having us.
This is Pastor Jin Mingru, also known as Ezra Jin.
It must be a strange time for you.
Just 3 weeks ago, he was a prisoner.
Like a princess?
Charged with crimes connected to the Christian church he runs.
Say hi, baby.
Yes.
Today, against all the odds, he is at his daughter's home in America.
What is that, baby?
An ordinary family scene with extraordinary significance. It is fleetingly rare for China to release a so-called prisoner of conscience. Even more rare for them to feel able to talk. We are the first journalists to sit down with him in person. This is the first time he's told his story to a camera. What he has to say matters because this is the context. A wider crackdown on Christians. Across China, raids and detentions have targeted underground churches. These movements tend to worship online and don't want to submit to strict state controls. They are officially banned. This is a story we've followed for months, to the sites of key churches and clampdowns. It's a story that has led us to Pastor Ezra Jin. This is him in happier, healthier times. He's the founder and leader of Zion Church, an underground Protestant movement. Long the subject of official attention. In October, he was arrested and jailed. We wanted to investigate what happened to Pastor Jin. And so, just a month before his sudden release, we followed in his footsteps, all the way to the southern Chinese city of Beihai. It's a laid-back holiday town. In recent years, Jin moved his church here to escape the ire of Beijing. It's a place where he thought it could be safe. In the end, this place proved him wrong. We're nervous, and we have reason to be. We are the first journalists attempting to visit the place where Ezra Jin was arrested. At this moment, it is a highly sensitive thing to attempt. We know that the apartment where Pastor Jin was living and working is really heavily surveilled now, but his community have invited us up. They want us to go up and take a look, but we're going to have to keep as low a profile as possible. So we're going to leave our big cameras behind. We're going to work just on these small ones. We're going to wear masks and hats to get in, to just try and avoid being detected for as long as we can. It doesn't take us long to find the place. Jin lived here with his elderly mother-in-law. This is the compound, okay. I reckon that's him up there, okay. We've been told a family friend will meet us at the gate. All right, so we are gonna head in. Are we all ready, guys? We keep our cameras down. Ni hao. Dr. Chen? We walk in silence. Huh? He gestures that the lifts here are bugged. Inside, Dr. Chen shows us around. Okay. This was Ezra Jin's room? Yeah. Okay. The place is peaceful, no signs of the upheaval it saw. The other person here is Jin's mother-in-law. So who is this? This Pastor Jin? Jinmu. And this is your daughter? She doesn't want to be interviewed, but she does want to show us her family in happier times. Across the hall, a study and a library. Oh, wow. Oh, there's a real proper library. A space to meet and to think. Dr. Chen was here when the police came.
就在这栋楼抓的就是，当天晚上的警察是在负一楼和一楼很多，然后呢，就是照着名单抓的，然后就在他家，然后把他领到这个房间，这里边有很多自己就是印的那些书都后来就全部收走了。
He was also taken but released the next day. Their target, he says, was clear.
抓过去主要是询问主要相关金牧师相关的一些金牧师做的什么，金牧师他有没有这个敬拜有没有二维码有没有收钱。真的，耶稣基督是唯一的头的话，这是一个比较困难的。
Thank you so much. They have taken a significant risk by inviting us here. They insisted it was something they wanted. For their safety and ours, we stay only 15 minutes. We felt the tension they live with. We had one more stop in this town, the prison where Jin and his colleagues were held. There were 18 of them here when we visited. It was hard to know what was happening inside. We wanted at least to ask. Hello, we are foreign journalists. We're here to ask about one inmate. Yeah, we're here to ask whether Pastor Ezra Jin is in this detention centre. His family are worried about his health. We want to ask how he's doing. We were waved away, none the wiser. Back in America, we now have a first-hand account of what it was like. A former Chinese inmate talking about their time in prison is incredibly rare. But Ezra Jin is free, and he wants to tell the world what happened.
看守所的情况呢，当然是从来没有经历过的事啊，就是非常非常艰难了。我们一般将近30个人睡在一个大床铺啊，小板凳里面待着，然后所有的就是时间全部都规定好了。你走路也得举手才能走路，不举手走路的话就受到惩罚有很多。
He was ultimately charged with illegal business operations. He says he was under constant pressure to confess. Claims we've put to the authorities and that have gone unanswered.
他呢，就是要说服，但是你得考虑一下你的同事们。真的，这次抓的人里边有一些人是有家的人，你这么不认罪啊，牵连到他们。哎呦，我里边真是特别的，就是动摇啊。将近1个月没见我的律师，然后就马上给家人写个信，就是第一个，我不会认罪，第二个，我不会自杀。
Can you just talk me through what happened when that release came? How did it all play out?
突然就管教来叫我，金明日赶紧出来！我以为是平常的什么审讯呢，所以出去，你就收拾你的东西。那个警车经过了我的小区的时候，他也没停下来。哎呦，我就说，那不是回家呀。然后就到了那个高铁站，一个车厢全都是包了，就是他们都是警察，有至少20-30个人嘛，都是便衣。有一个负责人就是金牧师啊，你知道你去哪儿吗？我说我不知道，可能到隐秘的地方吧。他就说你往好处想吧。我说我不敢想。
In fact, he was being taken to the airport, told that while his crimes had been established, he would not face prosecution. He boarded a plane and flew to America.
就是我出来以后就看到孩子们、妻子，还有那个小 baby 刚刚1个月的，就我想象不了，这再好也，我在里边想到的最乐观、最好的，也没有这种故事。我是一个普通的中国家庭教会的牧师，但是为了拯救这样的人，我不知道的很远的教会，他们都出来，信徒们都出来说，我们声援金牧师西安教会，我感觉到特别的蒙福，所以特别的谢谢所有的人，所有的人。
So how has this highly unusual release come to pass?
Yeah, I'll be going to China in a little while. There's another gentleman, a pastor, would like to see him get out. I'm going to bring his name up.
Well, there seems to be one clear reason. A personal plea from a president to a president.
Did you bring up with President Xi and the political prisoners in China?
I think he's giving very serious consideration to the past.
我是通过新闻联播看到的啊，他们说什么话的我都不可能知道，特别的感动。
There is universal agreement here amongst officials and observers that this case is really pretty unprecedented in recent times. It could only have been agreed at the highest level. But what feels strange is that despite what feels like a real coup of diplomacy, the American government, the American president have been completely silent about it. No one's claiming any credit. And that raises a whole range of questions about why. What was agreed? What might have been promised in return? And crucially, what does the whole thing say about China? It is a system that remains dogged in its pursuit of control, that is deeply suspicious of groups that are different. And that is unlikely to change.
China has not commented on the release of Pastor Jin. It says all cases will be handled in accordance with the law.
I'll finish,
It insists that religion is free and protected and rejects what it calls foreign interference. For this family, this feels like a miracle. But there are many others still waiting for theirs.
That report there from Helen Ann Smith, who's been tracking the crackdown on Christians for several months. Just have a listen to how China's foreign ministry responded a few weeks ago.
What's your response to the accusation that China is making it increasingly difficult for independent Christian movements to practice their religion?
The Chinese government manages religious affairs in accordance with the law and protects people's freedom of religious belief and normal religious activities. We firmly oppose interference in China's internal affairs under the pretext of the so-called religious issue.
That was China's foreign ministry there. Well, let's bring in Rachel Laser, who's the US Commissioner for International Religious Freedom. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. You know, Pastor Jin's family have described this as a miracle, and frankly, anyone who has any sense of what the Chinese system is like, once someone is thrown into prison, it's highly unlikely that they're ever heard from or seen again. So this is somewhat of a miracle, the fact that he's managed to come out and managed to make it to the United States.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a miracle, but one that was brought about by a lot of hard work and advocacy from a lot of different communities, advocates, Pastor Jin's daughter, Grace, and proudly, as a USERF commissioner, I'll say it was brought about as well by USERF's work. We issued a press release. We featured the pastor's daughter in a hearing on Christian persecution worldwide. And, you know, President Trump, as far as we know, really did bring this up when he took his trip to China. And it's notable that Pastor Jin arrived in America on July 4th for the 250th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, there is, no doubt that President Trump played a role in this. He talked about it ahead of his China trip. He mentioned it on Air Force One when he was asked, and he did say that Xi Jinping was going to take it seriously. Our reporter sort of raised the issue there about the fact that it's curious then that this administration hasn't taken credit for this. Why do you think that is? You know, given this is a president who likes to speak openly about, when something goes his way, that he played a hand in it.
It's a very fair question. It's a good question. I saw in the report. The honest answer is we don't know. We don't know why. Perhaps there are other priorities and it's still forthcoming. I mean, it's fair to say that, we're still waiting for a U.S. ambassador at large for international religious freedom to be appointed. And, I think there's a lot of other concerns right now that the country's dealing with, and perhaps it will be gotten to later.
Talk to us about the crackdown, not just on Pastor Jin, but there are many others. It's not just the Zion Church as well. It's any church that's frankly outside of the system has sort of come to the attention of the Chinese Communist Party, and they're cracking down. Give us a sense of how bad it is, because Pastor Jin is one of the lucky ones, but there are so many others who won't be as lucky as him.
Absolutely. And the Chinese government, under the rule of the Chinese Communist Party and President Xi Jinping, is one of the worst violators of religious freedom in the world. And we've designated it as a country of particular concern since 1999 at USERF, so for a very long time. And that's because there's this web of laws and regulations and policies that do not conform to international human rights standards. And I think a great example is the sinicization of religion policy. And for those who aren't familiar with it, this is a policy that seeks to forcibly assimilate all aspects of religious life, to synchronize it really with CCP ideology and policy. That's not religion, that's politics, right? And, you know, it affects Christians, it affects Muslims, and of course, you know, the ongoing genocide against the predominantly Muslim Uyghurs and Turkic minorities has been, you know, an enormous problem. It affects the Tibetan Buddhists and many, many more. I think Pastor Jin in your reporting was saying that there are 100 other pastors who are still in prison, and we're talking about terrible things. You know, we're talking about disappearances. We're talking about children who are stolen from families and forced to assimilate in boarding schools, and of course, genocide. So it's a very serious problem.
Yeah, and we're really grateful for your time. Thank you so much, Rachel Laser, for joining us here on the program.
Thank you.
And you can watch Helen Ann's special report on Ezra Jin and China's treatment of Christians on the Sky News YouTube channel, or by scanning the QR code on your screen now. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the program, the day that the powerful AI bots went rogue and hacked a rival company.
I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
There seems to be some sort of a shooting, what appears to be shots fired at the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
It was a jam-packed interview. I'll tell you what he told me, and I'll explain why you can't hear the call.
100 days in and back with the grassroots of this MAGA movement.
Feels a little bit like he's a king, not a president.
He is a king.
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too.
These immigration rates?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
I'm observing what you're doing.
This post of Trump, it's a big shift. It's very positive.
Have you seen what Donald Trump's been up to in the Rose Garden, in the East Wing?
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation. So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Big Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Next month will mark 5 years since the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan for a second time. Since then, Afghan women and girls have been deprived of nearly all their fundamental rights once again. A story that's all too familiar for my next guest, who was just 5 years old when they first seized power in 1996 and had to dress as a boy just to go to school. I'm joined now by Zara Joya, an Afghan journalist and the author of a new memoir, The Vanishing Girl of Kabul. But before we get started, I just wanted to remind our viewers of the full scale of the Taliban's crackdown on women. In some provinces, women are pressured not to leave the house without a male chaperone. Girls over the age of 12 can't go to secondary school, and women are banned from universities. There's been an increase in underage brides as families in poverty sell their children. Afghan women are forbidden from praying loudly or reciting the Quran in front of other women. They're also pushed out of many professions, including nursing and midwifery. Well, let's speak now with Zara Joya, who joins me here live. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. You know, I've talked about the fact that we're going to mark 5 years since the Taliban takeover. And I guess when the Taliban fell in 2001, it felt sort of unimaginable that they would return in this way and we would see and hear similar stories to what you went through. Because, you know, just reading through your book, you had to dress as a boy when they were first in power so that you could function in society. And frankly, we're seeing a repeat of that now again in 2026.
Thank you, Yalda Jan. Of course, it is really heartbreaking for me as an Afghan woman and Afghan journalist to see that history is repeating itself once again. And once again, after 20 years, women, girls like me, exactly, are banned from attending school, pursuing education. So today, I think that it is a harsh reality for our life in Afghanistan. I'm thinking about millions of girls and women that they deny it from their most basic and fundamental human rights. So obviously 5 years now, it's so difficult years for Afghans, particularly for women. I mean, imagine that during these 5 years, there was not a single day that women could take a break and to you know be free as a human being.
And not only are they living in this society where there's no hope for the future, you know, the Taliban have managed this time round to almost convince the world that at some point they would allow girls to go back to school and women to return to university, and they would allow them to go back to the workforce. And frankly, for 5 years, and I do a daily count of the number of days that girls don't go to school, it hasn't changed, and it doesn't feel like they're going to shift or change.
I think absolutely. I mean, the Taliban will never change because they have the same policy, the same ideology particularly towards women. So during these 5 years, I think the Taliban just killed the time. I mean, it's simply. So one of the reasons that I think in the West, we heard so many times that Afghans not talking to each other. So literally, Taliban don't want to talk to other Afghans. So ordinary people in Afghanistan, they're exhausted. So they want peace. Of course, it is something that we lost for many years and decades. And imagine that Afghanistan is a country that invited by so many countries, from the Soviet Union now to the United States and the West, and now there are other countries, region countries. So we definitely need to save this country, but how? This is a question that I think needs millions of things and solution.
You are a journalist, you have a publication called Rukhshana Media, you speak to women in the country. In your book, you talk about dressing up as a boy, calling yourself Muhammad. When you were 13, you didn't want to stop being a boy because you were so afraid about, you know, how much your life would change. Are you hearing similar stories now of young girls doing that so they can go to school, so that they can get out of their homes, so they can function within society?
So much. I mean, The Vanishing Girl of Kabul, it's not only my life story, it's about millions of girls and women. I mean, for me, I think it was an individual and kind of unique story, an opportunity for the first role of the Taliban, because I lived in the very rural area and also supportive family. But for imagine that other millions of women that they desire, they're passionate about learning, to attending a school. It's heartbreaking. And also, yes, later, I mean, years later, I have heard a story about a woman that she was dressed as a boy, went to work in the restaurant to bring some bread for her family. But unfortunately, very soon, she has been discovered by the Taliban, and I don't know what happened to her, but the Taliban, of course, they recognized her and they arrest her. So afterward, I really didn't know what happened to her.
Like thousands of Afghans, you left the country because you couldn't stay and live and operate in Afghanistan the way that you can from outside the country. But I guess, coming to the West, you talk about in your book the fact that you saw many things in the West where you thought actually the position of women was going backwards here as well, especially the United States.
Well, absolutely. I think in The Vanishing Girl of Kabul, I discussed about the backlash, global backlash in terms of women's rights. So, of course, Afghanistan is the worst place to be a woman now. And we have seen a lot of things backlash in the West, of course. One of the thing that I pointed out in the book about Kamala Harris, she couldn't win the election against Trump. So this is heartbreaking. And then I think women movements, women all over the world, they need to work harder for themselves. I think we need more women leadership. So this is one of our call in Roxana Media and in other form of advocacy, that please take this limitation of Afghan women's rights as an advantage and do more for women's rights. So this is one of the requests that Afghan women have from the West, particularly feminist movements, to support us in terms of gender apartheid recognition.
Do you have any hope that anything is likely to change in Afghanistan?
I think it's, of course, hope should be alive. This is the one point, and we have to fight for freedom, for reclaiming our rights. So, and then hope alone is not enough. We need hope. We need support, and also we need more kind of strategic solution for this problem and this dynamic situation that we have.
And when you speak to women in Afghanistan, do they think that eventually something will change for them?
I think they didn't give up. I mean, Afghan women literally didn't give up, despite many challenges and then the restrictions that Taliban put on themselves, on women. So they fight, they're still fighting, they're resisting. The day that the women in Herat started the protest against the Taliban, until now, there are online education, underground schools, and so many other activities. And they just making challenge to the Taliban and reclaiming their right.
Zahra, John, always really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the programme. Now, could this be the moment we all feared, the moment humans lose control of AI? Well, last night, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, admitted that 2 of its AI tools went rogue during a security test and hacked a rival company. The chief executive of the cyber attack startup described the development as mind-blowing. So is this a real turning point? We asked Neil Lawrence, professor of machine learning at the University of Cambridge. Just have a listen.
It's unprecedented because I don't think it's the case, or to our knowledge, that a frontier lab has explicitly had one of their models attack another commercial company. I suspect it's not unprecedented that people have been using these technologies to exploit cybersecurity vulnerabilities. It's not unexpected because we already knew that these models have or were going to have these capabilities. And we know that our existing software is riddled with cybersecurity vulnerabilities, and this has been a problem for a long time. And you know, the hens are coming home to roost in that regard. We really need to get on top of those security vulnerabilities urgently, because attacks like this, which in this case happened through an error of imagination of OpenAI, will also be occurring through state actors or cyber criminals.
That was Neil Lawrence talking about the dangers and concerns of AI after there was a concern that one of the AI bots attacked a rival company. This will be something that we continue to follow and monitor. But of course, you can watch more of that interview on our website. Now, this afternoon, the President attended the repatriation of the bodies of 4 US soldiers who were killed in the Middle East over the last week. First Lieutenant Tyler James Fian, 25, Sergeant Angel Rampasad, 28, and Private Isabel Gonzalez, just 19, were all killed in an Iranian attack on a US base in Jordan on Friday. 30-year-old Sergeant Michael Emmanuel Swinton was killed while disarming an Iranian drone at a US airbase in Iraq on Saturday. That's it from us tonight. We'll be back at 9 p.m. tomorrow. Jane Secker is up next. Goodbye.